Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am Kris, and I feel like, am I glitching? Nope, I'm gonna run with it. So this is part 5. CIA agents' stunning confession before his death, spies, hoods, and the hidden elite. Before we get started, thumbs up, subscribe, donate, thanks button. You get it. Let's go.
The crowds had begun to gather along the route in anticipation of seeing the President of the United States and the First Lady. It was noon. Chauncey was pacing in the parking lot behind the grassy knoll, waiting for the staged demonstration to begin.
I was told specifically by Philip H. Twombly that they were going to have this. He described it very specifically, that it was going to be a nonviolent demonstration incident that would be laid to the door of the pro-Castro Cubans. I just assumed that included in there, if it's going to be something that's serious enough to inject some life into this thing, it has to be more than a few placards. That it's going to be more than those "We Hate Kennedy" placards. That they were going to have to do something. And I would assume that, hey, they're going to take a shot at that motorcade, and with the intention of not hitting anyone. Maybe that's why they were going to use the Mannlicher Carno, because they couldn't be possible. They wouldn't know where they were going to shoot.
On the surface, the plan seemed simple. The demonstration would lead to public outrage.
You know that there's going to be a swell of public opinion is, hey, turn the screws on Castro. They'd have been yelling for them to invade Cuba and everything else.
The presidential motorcade was moving closer and closer. Chauncey could hear the crowd growing excited. It was 12:30.
When the shooting started at 12:30, then immediately after the first shot, which was a weak type shot, I realized that this was not any simple demonstration. You know, in addition to all the shots, people were screaming and carrying on and running in all these directions. I didn't actually see the shooting, although I was behind the picket fence within 25 yards of the motorcade, but I didn't see it.
Stand by just a moment, please. Something has happened in the motorcade route. Stand by, please. Put me on, Phil. Put me on. Something has happened here. We understand there has been a shooting. The presidential car coming up now. We know it's the presidential car. You can see Mrs. Kennedy's pink suit. There's a Secret Service man, spread eagle, over the top of the car. We understand Governor and Mrs. Connolly are in the car with President and Mrs. Kennedy. We can't see who has been hit, if anybody's been hit, but apparently something is wrong here. Something is terribly wrong.
Chauncey didn't see the president shot, but he sure heard something.
Oh, I heard it very well, and enough to know, first of all, that there was more shots fired than the 3 they claimed, and it seemed to me like that, and being a, somewhat of an expert, on shooting, that the shots did not all come from the same direction. I am quite sure that the shots were from different caliber guns and from a different source, and I know that there's 4 shots and possibly 5 shots. It's very hard to distinguish shots that are fired with an automatic or semi-auto from, you can shoot them as fast that the sounds merge together. But I believe that there's probably 5 shots, and that they came from different sources. It was just a fuselage of shots in a very, very short period of time. My first thing was to, hey, just get out of here, you know, just go over, mix with the crowd, you know, and go. But I had been given specific instructions, and when you're given specific instructions, that's what you do. I had enough time to just barely get to the boxcar, and when I arrived there, these two other individuals, known to me as Harrelson and Montoya, were already there, indicated that they were close by, and we jumped in the boxcar, closed the door, and just settled down to wait everything out. There was a search party that came by many times, but this boxcar appeared to be locked. It had a seal on it, and they kept passing it up. We could hear them outside. We could hear their radios and so forth.
The three sat in the boxcar for over an hour, listening to a police radio receiver Chauncey had concealed in a brown paper bag. Then around 2:20 p.m., the boxcar started to move.
It moved up the tracks, and then it backed down the tracks and stopped. What actually happened was that the Lee Bowers, who happened to be the tower operator, which supervised all the movements in the yard, happened to see somebody jump on the train farther up, and he ordered the train stopped, and they backed down the tracks a little ways. We weren't too concerned about it at that time because of the fact that, after all, it was a switching yard. But suddenly they stopped, and for some reason they chose that time they didn't pass the boxcar up. So we heard them rattling at the door, and I immediately got out my BATF credentials because I certainly didn't want to have a bunch of trigger-happy cops dragging us out of there. So the minute they opened the door, of course, I flashed my credentials and said I was with the BATF, had a badge and that sort of thing, all the credentials. And D.V. Harkness was a sergeant for the with the Dallas Police Department. He was in charge of this detail, and another officer by the name of Roy Vaughn was almost like his second in command. So we identified ourselves, or I identified myself. I did all the talking. I identified and said, "Hey, we're with the BATF. We're working undercover. We're investigating this arms shipment, and it's in this boxcar." And he and Vaughn conferred for a little bit, and they decided that they would send us over to the little area that had been set up as investigative type office.
Like a command center or something?
Yeah, a little command center. They had the sheriff's department, they had the police department, they had the FBI. It was all there, and it was over at the sheriff's department. So he assigned two cops, Marvin Wise and Billy Bass, to escort us over. And we started over, and it was just like a leisurely walk. Didn't seem like it was anything urgent. Harrelson was in the front at that time, and he was just sort of strolling along like he was enjoying the whole situation. He was probably smoked up on something because he was a notorious narcotics user. So then he suddenly changed. Montoya went by him, and Montoya got in front. So they took us around the plaza by the Texas Book Depository.
They were headed to the sheriff's command post near Elm and Houston. Once there, the three were interrogated briefly and released. These men would later be called the Three Tramps.
They were taking pictures of everybody in sight, and incidentally, there's a lot of guys with pictures that they ended up taking their pictures that we still aren't sure who they were. I mean, one guy, they picked him up. They took a picture of this one guy. I mean, he's dressed in all in black, almost like a ninja. They still don't know who that guy was. There's a picture of one guy that the police are putting in a police car, and he's a military type looking guy, you know, very fit, had that crew haircut on. They're putting him in there, and they've been trying to identify this guy for all these years, and they haven't been able to. He just got lost in the shuffle like everybody else did.
While a number of suspects were questioned within minutes of the shooting, that wasn't the case for Chauncey, Montoya, and Harrelson. They were detained 2 hours later. Just look at the shadows in the photos. It's clearly late afternoon.
The pictures were taken by reporters, from the newspaper reporters, as we were walking around. They took pictures of us all the way around that plaza. You'll see a lot, there's a lot of them walking in front of the school book depository.
Chauncey Holt's claim to be one of the so-called three tramps has been documented elsewhere.
There is more than just Holt's word. There is also his face.
It's just too close.
Lois Gibson is the Houston Police Department's forensic artist. She made comparisons of Holt and the tramp in the photographs.
This is just conclusive to me that that's the same man.
She also compared pictures of Charles Harrelson with the tramp photo. Again, a perfect match.
I'll stake my reputation on it for sure.
Looking at the feet of the tramp, you will notice he has a distinctive walk, toes pointed outward. The same characteristics possessed by Chauncey. Chauncey developed his unmistakable gait as a result of his earlier years on the circus high wire. Off camera, Chauncey hints at the use of disguises in covert operations. Phil Twombly told Chauncey to dress the part of a working man.
I was instructed to just blend in with the other individuals that were there, and the workers that were in the yards.
So Chauncey, in his working man's clothes, along with his boxcar companions, were led to the Dallas County Sheriff's Command Post in the Criminal Courts Building.
The deputy sheriff that was in charge of sort of a preliminary type investigation was a guy by the name of David Elkins. So they took us up there and had a few words with him, and he called over to the police department, and Will Fritz, who was the chief homicide detective and was really in charge of the whole thing, came over and told Elkins, turn him over to Gordon Shanklin of the FBI.
Chauncey was briefly interrogated by Gordon Shanklin of the FBI. Chauncey's fake credentials from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms came in real handy.
So he looked at him, he was sort of convinced. He asked us a few questions, which didn't seem like he was too much interested. He wanted to know how long we'd been in the boxcar. We said 2 hours. He wanted to know, did you hear the shots? No, we didn't hear the shots. What were you doing? Why'd you have the door closed? Yeah, because we didn't want anybody from the outside knowing what we were doing. Were you aware of what was going on? No. What were you doing all this time? Oh, we were looking at the paperwork, and we were inventorying the arms and ammunition.
Shanklin asked if Chauncey and his two associates were armed. They were.
The two guns I had were very unusual. One gun was a shorty 45. It was a 45 that was just simply cut down. They had taken all national match parts. They cut down the slide. They cut down the grip, they cut down everything about it. Otherwise, it was just like any other 45, except it had a hell of a kick. And that was one, and of course it was hard chromed, and it was very, very unusual gun. I would probably $2,500, $3,000 worth of gunsmithing in it. The other gun that I had was technically it was a Simmerling L22. It was usually referred to as the Lickman because he was the guy that designed it. It was a very small 45 that was as small as the 25, because you can see in the pictures it's laying beside the 25, and it's no bigger. But it wasn't a semi-automatic. What you had to do, you'd fire a shot, and then you'd rack it, fire again, rack it, like that, but it was and of course it was accurate up to about 25 yards and had one hell of a kick. Well, these were rare guns, and they were very interested in the guns, and he asked me if I'd mind if they photographed the guns, and I said no. So they photographed the guns. They gave them back to us, and it was only years later, through an ex-FBI agent, that I managed to get a hold of the pictures. He got the pictures for me, although he couldn't find the negatives in the files. But he did send me the contact print.
Shanklin bought Chauncey's story and told the three men they were free to go.
Once Oswald was arrested, I mean, the FBI took no more interest in finding anybody, because within 15 minutes, J. Edgar Hoover had already declared that the president had been shot by a communist-carrying terrorist. And once Oswald was captured, that was the end of the game.
Chauncey noticed someone he knew at the command post. It was a mafia courier.
As I was walking out, actually, as we were walking in, Gene Braden, who was a organized crime figure, happened to be walking out, and I knew him. He had been detained temporarily. I knew him because, and I'd seen him just the past week. I knew him because we shared offices in a building at the corner of San Vicente and Wilshire in Beverly Hills. So I had seen him the week before, and he indicated that he was going to be in Dallas, going to be staying at the Cabana. Said, hey, why don't you come by and have a drink? So I knew he was there, but I didn't give any indication of knowing him. He didn't give any indication of knowing me, which of course I suppose was, it would have been disastrous if we hadn't, because here I am, he knows me as Moon. I'm using an alias of John O'Malley in this particular operation. He had changed his name from Gene Braden to Jim Braden, and he had been arrested under that name, Jim Braden. And suppose I'd run in and say, hi, Gene. He said, hey, hello, Jack. I could see that there would have been they had scooped us up in a hurry.
Jim Braden, an ex-con on parole, was in the building across from the school book depository, the Daltex building. He was there, he says, to make a phone call. Braden was also taken into custody and released.
Okay. This will be the last part. With this whole story, I was expecting him to know who the shooter is. It's glitching out on me again. So it's a little disappointing, but maybe he's saving it for the last part. I don't know. But let's find out. Until next time, have a good day, have a good night.